Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Barker. Here's Bob.
He's been called one of the most well-groomed gentlemen to ever grace the airwaves. A seamless performer who has been cuddled and kissed more than any celebrity in Hollywood.
Come on down! We have young women that love Bob Barker. We have older women that love Bob Barker. We have men that love Bob Barker. So he's a fun guy that is giving away $60,000 cars.
Bob Barker is a television icon, a game show giant. He gives contestants a shot at winning the American dream.
Bob is like the captain of a ship. You know he's in control. He's got the stripes on his sleeve. He's dependable. He's very smooth.
The veteran MC has given away prizes and pageant winners for over 40 years. He's even put his career on the line to fight for causes dear to his heart. But the passionate performer has also experienced public scandals, as well as personal sorrows.
He went through this period of just incredible depression. I mean, he just wasn't himself.
Bob Barker has triumphed over many tragedies in his life. He remains the leading man of daytime television, the master of his game. Bob Barker has always been on the right track for success. He was born Robert William Barker on December 12, 1923, in Darrington, Washington. His parents nicknamed him Billy. His mother, Tilly, was a teacher. His father, Byron, who was 1/4 Sioux Indian, was an electrician. In the late 1920s, Byron Barker moved his family to Brownsville, Texas, where he worked on an electrical construction site. He suffered a series of work-related injuries, which eventually took his life when Bob was 6 years old.
I remember when he was terminally ill, he was at home. And one day he called me into his room and he said, "Billy, you must always take care of your mother," because he realized that he was not going to live. I remember that.
Bob would remember the promise he made to his father. In 1931, he moved with his mother to Mission, South Dakota, located on the Rosebud Indian Reservation. Tilly Barker resumed teaching at a local public school. Mother and son survived the best they could as the country was swept into the Great Depression. Bob made friends with many of the Indian children on the reservation, as well as the stray dogs in the area.
He told me that when he was a little boy, he and his mother lived on the Rosebud Indian Reservation. And there was a 2-story hotel, which was the only 2-story building on the reservation. And when she wanted to find him, she'd go to the 2nd floor and look out, or up on the rooftop and look out and look for a pack of dogs. And she knew when she saw them that undoubtedly she would find Billy.
Bob's boyhood respect for animals would grow as he matured into adulthood. So too would his empathy for Native Americans.
He'll talk about his junior high basketball team. And the names of the players were all very Indian, and he feels very strongly about the problems that they've had, that they've been incredibly badly treated.
In 1936, Bob's mother remarried. Her second husband, Louis Valandra, was half Sioux and worked for the Reservation Commission. The following year, the couple had a son, Kent. Bob, who was already 15 at the time, immediately bonded with his half-brother.
Well, Bob was a very thoughtful brother. Of course, he was quite a bit older than I was, so it wasn't the situation where we could ever pal around, because I was 3 when he was in high school. But we've always been very close.
In 1939, Bob's family moved to Springfield, Missouri. The tall and lanky teen attended Springfield, Missouri High School, where he was a star on the basketball team.
I met Bob Barker in the 10th grade. He sat next to me in algebra, and I don't think I would have gotten through algebra without Bob Barker. My first impression of Bob Barker was that he was a winner, that he was going to do something that would make his mark.
Bob taught his friend Jim the finer points of math. Jim, in turn, introduced Bob to the love of his life.
We became very good friends, and the following year, I introduced him to a girl named Dorothy Jo Gideon, with whom I'd grown up, and I had it in my mind that this would be a wonderful match. So I arranged a blind date, and you know, we were 16 years old, but the moment they saw each other, boom, that was it.
On November 17th, 1939, we went to hear Ella Fitzgerald, and I never cared about any of the other girls after that.
Bob fell madly in love with Dorothy Jo. The two were inseparable. In 1941, they graduated from high school and both attended Drury College in Springfield. Bob enrolled on a basketball scholarship and studied economics. 2 years later, his education was suddenly put on hold when the United States entered World War II. In 1943, Bob dropped out of college and enlisted in the Navy, where he trained to be a fighter pilot. He promised Dorothy Jo, who was finishing college, that they would marry as soon as he got his wings.
Dorothy Jo was the single most important thing in my life. She was very bright and totally devoted, and did everything she could to help me in everything that I tried to do.
On January 12, 1945, the naval pilot married his high school sweetheart. The newlyweds moved to Banana River Naval Air Station, which is now in Cape Canaveral, Florida. But Bob never made it to sea. The war ended before he was able to fly into combat. Bob returned to Drury College after the war. He studied political science and economics. He never dreamed about a life in the limelight.
I never thought about being in entertainment, never. I was never in a school play. I can't sing, I can't dance. I had no desire to be an actor. I wanted to pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals. I was held back by a total lack of talent.
The college student soon discovered his real talent. He needed a job to subsidize his tuition and support his new bride. He heard about a job at KTTS radio station in Springfield, Missouri.
I'd done some work on a public address system. And Charlie White, a teacher in the high school where I went to school, had told me that I had done a pretty good job. I might be able to be a radio announcer if I wanted to. And I heard about the manager of a radio station who was crazy about airplanes. So I put on my naval officer's uniform and my wings of gold, and I went down and I talked about airplanes for about a half hour, and I had my first job in radio.
Bob learned every aspect of radio. He was a disc jockey, sports announcer, and news writer. Without any voice training, he was a natural on the airwaves, especially when it came to hosting programs where he interacted with an audience.
Dorothy Jo heard my first audience participation radio show. And after the show, she said, "This is what you should do." She said, "You do this better than you've ever done anything else." She didn't say I was good. She just said I did it better than I'd ever done anything else.
Bob followed his wife's advice. In 1949, he graduated with honors from Drury College and earned a degree in political science. But his voice would become his ticket to stardom. Bob Barker discovered he had a gifted voice after working at a radio station during college. In 1947, the college graduate and his wife, Dorothy Jo, moved from Missouri to Florida in search of work and a little fun in the sun.
Within a couple of weeks, he had a radio show and was off and running. And, you know, he had that ability to just convince people he knew what he was doing. He never was out of work after that.
Bob quickly found a job as an announcer at WWPG radio station in Palm Beach, Florida. Dorothy Jo secured a teaching position at West Palm Beach High School. In her spare time, she helped Bob along with his career.
My wife worked along with me on shows. She would write for me and actually go and help me at the shows and so on.
The couple soaked up the sunny Florida climate for 1 year. Then Bob decided to set his sight on a bigger radio market, Southern California. In 1950, the Barkers moved to Los Angeles.
When I came to California, I should have starved. I had no agent, I had no job, I had no contacts of any kind. And it was estimated that there were 3,000 radio announcers walking the streets of Hollywood. And probably 2,999 of them had better voices than I did. This was the days of the big radio voice, you know?
The novice radio announcer had to compete with the biggest names in the business, including Jack Benny and Art Linkletter, who both hosted their own shows.
And starring Art Linkletter.
Well, it's Pillsbury time again here in Southern California, where the very first breath of fall in the autumn is in the air today.
Bob quickly proved his voice was big enough to compete with radio's best and brightest. In 13 weeks, he secured his own live radio program, The Bob Barker Show.
From Alhambra, California, your Southern California Edison Company presents The Bob Barker Show.
Southern California Edison Company sponsored the program where Bob demonstrated how to use electric ranges, refrigerators, and washing machines before a live radio audience.
Don't let drying day blues get you down. Visit your appliance dealer today in South Pasadena.
Bob and Dorothy Jo developed this idea to do shows in various communities in Southern California on small stations. Dorothy Jo would gather up the prizes from local merchants, and these would be the gifts, the prizes on the show. And they worked on the scripts together. It was a precursor of what he later did on television, really. And that's where he cut his teeth and where he got his basic training.
The rising star of radio was getting recognized in Hollywood. In 1955, Bob segued into a brand new medium, television. He first hosted a local Southern California show called Your Big Moment. But Bob's big moment would come hosting a national program. In 1956, Ralph Edwards, MC of the popular television programs This Is Your Life and Truth or Consequences, was tired of hosting both shows. He began auditioning his replacement for Truth or Consequences, a lively game show where contestants who failed to answer questions before a buzzer were forced to pay the consequences.
Ralph Edwards was driving in Los Angeles, and he heard Bob on one of these shows that he was doing and called him, made an appointment for lunch, and they had lunch together, and Ralph Edwards said, "I just wanted to see if you looked as good as you sounded, and you do, so the show is yours."
Remember this name. You're going to be hearing a lot about him. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Barker. Here's Bob. Hiya, kid. Limber? All set? Let's see. The Dean Cromwell always says, yep, he's ready.
Well, when I started in 1956, television, it was a new medium. It changed my life. And I shall be forever grateful to Ralph for that. There are people who say, well, someone else would have given you an opportunity. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe not.
But for each of you, we have a beautiful Sunbeam automatic percolator, which ensures you a...
Truth or Consequences began Bob's new career on national television. Audiences responded enthusiastically to his charming, clean-cut looks and down-home demeanor.
Now, in just exactly 1 minute, you'll see our second Truth or Consequences contestant try to catch a fish worth $1,000 in cold, hard cash.
Bob and I first met in a booth at the old Hollywood Brown Derby. And I went to the booth, and there was Ralph, an old friend, sitting there with the handsomest guy I ever saw. I thought, well, there's a new movie star in town. And it was Bob Barker. He's a very bright man, and I think an intellectual man, which he tries to hide because that frightens people a little bit, I think. But he's a heavy thinker. I think that Ralph Edwards found a nugget when he found Bob Barker.
Good luck, happy consequences. Let's have some contestants out here. Good luck, Bob Barker.
The former radio host felt instantly at ease in front of the camera. He now used his voice and face to create spontaneous entertainment before thousands of viewers.
The single most memorable moment on Truth or Consequences for me was a reunion. The reunions were where we would bring a husband and wife together. Perhaps he'd been overseas for a long time, or maybe two sisters who hadn't seen each other. And it was the most popular feature of the show.
Feeling around like this, he was in a skiing accident, and she wants to be sure he's all together. Yeah. And he's all right. Let's get this off of him, and now prepare yourself for the shot. But that's just the thing they did in the outfit.
Bob Barker hosted Truth or Consequences from 1956 to 1974. He became a television pioneer. The talented MC came into millions of homes 5 nights a week. He amused and moved Americans through this new form of entertainment. Bob witnessed the medium of television evolve from black and white to color over the 18 years he emceed Truth or Consequences, and millions of viewers witnessed the young host evolve into one of the most recognizable faces on television. In 1972, Mark Goodson, a well-known game show producer, asked Bob if he'd be interested in hosting a revamped version of The Price is Right, a half-hour game show where prizes were awarded to contestants who bid on merchandising. The original series, starring Bill Cullen, ran from 1956 to 1963 before going off the air.
During the time that I was doing Truth or Consequences, Mark Goodson called me and said that it's going to be a completely different show. He said, do you have the time available, and contractually, could you do a network show? I was doing Truth or Consequences in syndication 5 nights a week. I said I could, because I could do a show on the network during the daytime.
And now here's the star of the new Price is Right, Bob Barker.
On September 4th, 1972, the new Price is Right debuted on CBS. Overnight, Bob Barker became one of the hardest-working MCs in Hollywood. By day, he hosted The Price is Right. By night, he continued hosting Truth or Consequences. But after 3 years of hosting 2 shows, Truth or Consequences was finally canceled in 1974. Bob no longer had to work double shifts. He put all his energy into one of the most popular game shows on daytime television.
Bob brought to the show a dynamic which was missing in the earlier version. Bob brought his own energy, his own intelligence to the show.
Bob doesn't smile as much off camera as he does on, but he has a thorough interest in other people, a genuine interest, and he looks you right in the eye when he talks to you.
Bob Barker had an immediate rapport with the Price is Right audiences, who were always a melting pot of cultures and classes. Contestants viewed Bob as a perennial Santa Claus, giving away gifts like it's Christmas 5 days a week.
I think a lot of the people who come to The Price is Right think of Bob Barker as the guy who has the pink slip to their car.
When I was doing Wheel of Fortune, I was head-to-head with him without wanting to, and he just beat us up. Bob seems to have a great rapport with the audience. I think it's different than most people. He really seems to be in their pocket, or they're in his pocket.
Backstage, they have monitors.
The handsome host transformed the defunct game show into a television event, full of frenetic fans, raucous games, and glitzy prizes. Bob had attained almost a rock star status. Contestants often rush the stage to steal a hug or kiss.
Years ago, he used to be almost accosted by contestants. They would pick him up, they would jump and hug him, and now he actually tells the contestants, please, if you come up on stage,
let's not hurt me.
Don't hurt me, you know.
He's not playing a role, he's playing himself. He's their uncle, their father, their brother, their best friend.
Producers of The Price is Right say Bob Barker is not a game player. He is calm and collected on and off camera. Nothing seems to rattle his concentration. He is always prepared for the unexpected when a contestant's name is called to come on down.
I said I had a dream about you, so I had to come down here.
What were we doing in the dream?
You were chasing me in the hayloft.
You bid $6,000 and the actual retail price is $8,602, a difference of $2,602. You win, Eileen.
There comes a point where everything that's set in stone goes flying out the window many times during the game, and you're on your own, pal. And you better be able to pull everything back together, have a good time doing it, and be fast on your feet. And Bob's very fast on his feet.
What did you say?
I said I want to kiss you.
My dear, that can be a... Oh, wow! Yes, all right.
Memorable moments on The Price is Right come by the bucketful. There was a young lady out in the audience in a tube top. This happened maybe 20 years ago, but it's still talked about. Her name was called to be a contestant. She jumped to her feet, began jumping up and down. Out they came. She came on down and they came on out on CBS, and no one has ever forgotten it.
Bob Barker believes unexpected bloopers help to make the show a success. But many fans feel it's Bob himself who keeps them tuned in. By the late 1970s, he was one of the most lovable personalities on daytime television. The MC proved he was The Price is Right's winning ticket. By the late 1970s, Bob Barker was already a game show giant. In 1975, The Price is Right went from a half hour to an hour, making it the longest game show on television. The workaholic host has always gotten involved in every aspect of production, from camera moves to choosing new games and prizes.
He really is precise. When the camera is down, sure, he interacts with the audience. He's talking to the producers. He's moving all the time.
Yes, you are a winner, John, and if you continue your winning ways, you'll end up with this. It's a dune cycle. You'd like to have that, wouldn't you?
To go to work.
You'd ride that to work.
Bob says one of his secret ingredients for success was his wife, Dorothy Jo. She was his harshest critic and biggest fan. She influenced him on and off camera. In 1980, she became a vegetarian and began championing the rights of animals. Bob quickly followed suit.
Dorothy Jo was ahead of her time so far as animals were concerned. I had bought her furs that she stopped wearing because I myself was not cognizant of what I was doing, you know. I wasn't aware, like so many of us were not. And Dorothy Jo became a vegetarian. And I became a vegetarian. And I stopped wearing leather jackets that I had.
In 1981, Bob began a long crusade to prevent animal abuse. He convinced the executives of The Price is Right to stop giving away furs as prizes.
I don't think Bob has ever threatened to walk off. Bob just makes it very clear, simply by saying, I don't want to be associated with furs, and I won't present them, and I won't be on the show if they're being offered that day. You effectively take furs out of play.
The Barkers' personal love and concern for animals intensified over the years. The couple had decided not to have children. They instead adopted countless stray dogs and cats over the years they were together.
Bob and Dorothy Jo never had children. They had a number of dogs, but I think, in a sense, their children was Bob's career. Dorothy Jo was devoted not only to Bob, but to what he was doing, and I think really everything else took a back seat.
By 1981, Bob Barker's life seemed perfect. He was part of one of the longest-running game shows and marriages in Hollywood. He had hosted The Price is Right for 9 glorious years, and he and Dorothy Jo had been together for more than 40 years.
Although I don't think she'd have ever said it, it was sad to her in a sense that she was not part of his professional life. But she was very much a part in the sense that he asked her opinion about everything. They would have this quiet hour every night in which they'd sit down and just talk about their day and what was important. And her opinion was all important.
In the summer of 1981, the couple decided to take a much-needed vacation. They sought relaxation on the island of Maui in Hawaii.
When they finally could go to Hawaii together, Dorothy Jo had had emphysema, but it was seemingly under control. They were sitting in their hotel room. Dorothy Jo said, "This has been one of the most perfect days of my life." That night, she had convulsions.
Doctors discovered Dorothy Jo had lung cancer. Her prognosis was not good. Bob kept a 24-hour vigil at her bedside during the last few months of her life.
She said to me, "You are going to be alone now." And she said, "Don't worry about that." She said, "You will find that being alone can really be very pleasant." She said, "You will discover solitude." And I have.
On October 19th, 1981, Dorothy Jo passed away. Family and friends say a part of Bob passed away with her.
He went through this period of maybe 2 years of just incredible depression. I mean, he'd never admit it, I don't think. But, I mean, he just wasn't himself. He was emotionally tied up in knots.
Bob tried to bury himself in work. He put in longer hours at the studio, but nothing seemed to stop his grieving.
He was from, I guess maybe called the old school of entertaining, because
show must go on.
The show must go on. And he would walk through those doors, and he would perform and do his stuff because he knew he had to. 8 million people were counting on him for a little bit of entertainment. And he did it, even though it was a tough time in his life.
The show would go on for the game show host, but his life would never be the same. His wife was gone, and his mother, Tilly, was now in ill health. Bob kept the promise he made to his father to always take care of his mother. He moved his invalid mother into his home to provide her with round-the-clock care. The MC, who had always been a winner, was now experiencing tremendous loss. Bob Barker proved he was a survivor. He continued hosting The Price is Right after the devastating death of his wife. But that was not his only paycheck. The Master of Ceremonies co-anchored the Tournament of Roses parade every New Year's Day between 1968 and 1989. He also continued emceeing both the Miss USA and Miss Universe beauty pageants, which he had done since 1967.
It first occurred to me how good he was, really, when I went down to Miami when he was doing the Miss Universe contest. And you see this enormous set with all of these people in the audience, and you're in the dressing room with him a half hour before the show starts, and they're giving him changes and where he's going to walk and what he's going to do.
And there are the Miss Universe semi-finalists in the swimsuit competition.
With the Universe pageant, I traveled all over the world and had all sorts of experiences, some good and some not so good.
In 1987, producers of the Miss USA pageant promised Bob that it would be the last year they gave away furs as prizes. But the animal rights MC was shocked to discover that contestants would still wear fur coats during the telecast.
So I told the producers that I couldn't be on the stage surrounded by these young women in fur coats because I'd gone all over the country speaking out against fur. I'd be a total hypocrite. And it leaked to the press, and it was the best thing that ever happened to the anti-fur campaign. It was front page news all over the country. It was on national television.
The incident, known as the fur flap, raised more media attention than any event in animal rights history. The public angrily protested the pageant's use of furs. The Miss USA pageant felt the pressure and finally agreed to use synthetic furs. Bob eventually hosted the pageant, but it would be his last. The following year, the Miss USA and Miss Universe pageants refused to drop fur coats from their prize packages.
And then Bob said, well, if you don't drop the fur, I can't with good conscience do your program anymore. And he said, well, we're going to keep the fur, Bob. So he walked away from the Miss Universe contest. He turned down big bucks to do what he believed in. And in my opinion, this was the biggest mistake Miss Universe ever did. They have never recovered with Bob leaving the show.
In 1988, Bob Barker resigned from the two pageants he had hosted for 21 years. He was now one of the most visible animal rights activists in the country. In 1988 and 1989, on post-Thanksgiving Friday, the busiest shopping day of the year, he led massive marches through the streets of Manhattan, protesting the purchasing of furs.
I am opposed to animal exploitation in all of its ugly forms. And there is no form of animal exploitation that is more indefensible than the fur industry. There is absolutely no reason to wear fur today.
Barker carried his crusade to Hollywood. He used his celebrity status to stop animal abuse and mistreatment in motion pictures. In 1985, he orchestrated a criminal investigation into the film Project X, where chimpanzees were reportedly abused on the set.
I think it's been very courageous. He has certainly been the only personality to take a strong public position against the abuse and mistreatment of animals used in the making of motion pictures and television shows.
The TV host has used his fame and fortune to establish the DJ&T Foundation, named in honor of his deceased wife, Dorothy Jo, and his mother, Tilly, who passed away in 1989. The organization funds the spay and neuter of animals across the country.
He does not hesitate if he sees a stray to try to stop and rescue it. He will pick them up. He's been on his way to performances and stopped and picked up dogs off the street and put them in the back of limos. I'm not sure how happy the drivers were about it, but he's more concerned about the well-being of the animal.
Bob Barker was known as the television personality willing to take a bold stand. In 1989, he was ready to show the world his true age. The 65-year-old Price is Right host stopped dyeing his hair.
He's a very honest person. He said, hey, I'm over 60. We have gray hair.
This is what I look like?
I'm going to have gray hair.
We stopped taping on a Tuesday for the summer. Well, the show next to Tuesday, where he had dark hair, was a Wednesday show, and that was the start of the fall season. And we shot him with near white hair. He tells us he got a letter from a gentleman saying, what happened? That must have been one heck of a night. From Tuesday to Wednesday, his hair changed color.
Audience loved his hair.
Oh,
they called him the Silver Fox.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very Bob Barker thing to do.
Bob Barker had always tried to do the right thing. But in 1994, the game show host was accused of doing something wrong. Diane Parkinson, a former Price is Right model, filed an $8 million sexual harassment suit against Bob Barker. She claimed she was forced to have sex with the game show host, or she would be fired.
He acknowledged that he and Diane had had, I guess what Clinton would call an inappropriate relationship, although at the time Bob was not married, and it was certainly consensual. Diane, for reasons which are still a mystery to me, a year after she left the show, and left the show, I must say, under amicable circumstances, decided to bring litigation.
Bob had to pay Parkinson off or go public. The host decided to tell the truth and pay the consequences. He held a press conference where he admitted to having a consensual relationship with the former model.
As God is my witness, I have never forced her to do one thing that she did not want to do, ever.
It was an unfair claim. She'd really been in the relationship, she'd pursued the relationship, and was happy about being in the relationship. It was devastating for Bob, it was devastating for everybody on the show, and it was unnecessary. It shouldn't have happened.
Diane Parkinson eventually dropped the lawsuit, but the allegations left emotional scars on the host with the wholesome image.
He was humiliated and hurt and angry. You know, he'd spent his entire life, he feels, doing the right thing and creating the image of somebody who does the right thing, and then to have these kind of accusations come out were really painful to him.
The harassment suit did little to tarnish Bob's image. Family and friends rallied to support him, and The Price is Right continued to attract millions of fans who still worshipped their favorite game show host. By the mid-1990s, Bob Barker had survived public scandal and personal losses. He was still one of America's leading game show hosts. He was also one of the fittest. The tan and toned performer worked out every day. Over the years, his regimen included karate, which he learned from one of the masters.
I had the good fortune of meeting Chuck Norris. Chuck was a guest on Truth or Consequences, and I was so impressed with what Chuck did that I told him I wanted to take lessons. So Chuck used to come here to my home, and he and I would work out here in the lawn. And I really enjoyed karate. But beyond that, karate has made a real difference in my life.
Bob has even demonstrated his karate kicks over the years on The Price is Right. In 1996, his martial arts ability, along with his TV persona, attracted the attention of a longtime fan, Adam Sandler. The actor-writer who got his start on Saturday Night Live was now making movies. He began production on his slapstick comedy, Happy Gilmore. He asked Bob if he'd play his golf partner who ends up boxing him.
Adam Sandler had watched The Price is Right ever since he was a little boy. And when they were preparing the script for Happy Gilmore, Adam included me. I had studied karate for years with Chuck Norris. So, of course, I had been beaten up in every fight I'd ever had. I'd never won a fight. And I saw in the script that I was going to win the fight, so I said, I'll do the movie. I want to win the fight.
I can't believe you're a professional golfer. I think you should be working at the snack bar.
The game show host finally made his movie debut after 45 years on the small screen. Happy Gilmore was a box office hit. Many fans feel that Bob's boxing brawl with Sandler stole the show.
I don't want a piece of you. I want the whole thing.
The audience loved it. People, when they come to the show, they're always asking, when's he going to do another Happy Gilmore? And Bob tells him he's waiting.
The price is wrong.
I think you've had enough.
And I thought, gee, I'm going to have all sorts of film roles now. But all the parts that I really want to play, they're giving to Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise or somebody like that.
The game show host turned actor wasn't quite ready to quit his day job. In 1998, CBS honored the legendary MC who had given 42 years of service to the network and millions of viewers. priceless performer has earned numerous awards and accolades over the years. He has won 10 Emmy Awards as TV host, more than any other performer. He has also won 2 Emmys as executive producer of The Price is Right. In May of 1999, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences presented him with their most coveted prize, the Lifetime Achievement Award.
And it has been suggested that since this is a Lifetime Achievement Award, that I should say something profound. And I shall. Help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Thank you, everybody.
The 75-year-old host has demonstrated that age and longevity are something to behold. He still gets kissed and hugged by as many fans as he did 27 years ago.
And I think there's a new thing happening with Bob and the show, is we have great enthusiastic response from college kids.
Oh, boy.
From people in their 20s, late teens. And I think what's happening now is Bob represents a link to the past, to their youthful innocence.
How many people 75 are still working? How many people 75 are doing something every day that they thoroughly enjoy? And I owe it all to the television viewers.
Bob seems to have improved with age, like a good wine. He's mellower, and he's less effusive than he used to be, but the enthusiasm is still there.
Bob Barker shows no signs of slowing down professionally after appearing on television for over 45 years. But the widower still spends much of his free time alone, reading and reflecting on his life.
I like to travel. I like to read, and I do read a lot. I like lying right out there in the sun by that pool. I excel at lying in the sun doing absolutely nothing. I never had any desire to remarry. Dorothy Jo was the love of my life. She was my wife, and that's the way it is.
Bob Barker has weathered through public and personal tragedies and has reaped the fruits of fame. He plans to continue working on The Price is Right as long as he's able. The game show legend has proven he's still the host with the right stuff.
I hope Bob never retires. I want him to stay on for another 10 years, Bob. At least.
He's just one of the best at what he does, and he will be a landmark for other people to look to, a mentor, an example. He'll be all of these things. Bob is an icon. He really is. If he was on your computer, there'd be a little picture of Bob right there, and you'd press it, and you go to best game show host on the earth.
Won't you help me say goodbye?